You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devannon, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. I'm so thankful to have you with me again one more week. Today I'm talking with a lady by the name of Luanne Smith, and she is an author and an editor, and she's here to tell us all about her newest book, Taboos and Transgressions, Stories of Wrongdoings. Now, a title like that really speaks for itself, does it not? This conversation is gritty, it is real, it is loving, it is everything you need it to be and so much more. In this episode, we're going to get into an argument in favor of tattoos. We're going to talk about the importance of living true to yourself. We're going to talk about whether or not God is really a stickler for the rules like conservatives try to make him seem. And then the most darling story is shared with us by Luanne about how her former students came out through writing and storytelling, and it is just the cutest thing I have ever heard, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. I just know you're going to get a lot out of this episode. Well, hello, Luanne, darling. Welcome to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm fucking fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing great. Doing great.
Yeah, like we were talking before we pressed that record button, and I'm jealous of you, bitch, because you're in fucking Florida where
Yeah.
it's sunny and nice, and I'm in goddamn Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The high today is like 43 fucking whole degrees. Uh,
I think we're getting up to 75 today, so I'm in the t-shirt and shorts. So
if it weren't for this pandemic, I might be recording from Miami, or at least
oh,
Los
that would be
Angeles.
so nice, wouldn't it?
Or Los Angeles. My favorite city is Los Angeles, and I just
Uh-huh.
Baton Rouge is not going to do it for me. I cannot wait to move back to California. But here we are today. We're going to be talking about some of your writing. Now, you've gifted the world with 3 books. One is called Runaway. The other one is Taboos and Transgressions, Stories of Wrongdoings. And I think there's one in the works called, I think, like Muddy Backroads or something like that.
Yeah, just finishing it up now.
So tell us about your history and why you're drawn to these taboo books.
I'm not sure. I grew up working class in Kentucky, and I kind of like work that's down and dirty myself to read, and has a little grit to it. And so when I started work editing these books, I wanted stories I like to read, ones that have a little grit to them. And the Runaway story kind of had a funny, or Runaway book kind of had a funny beginning, because I was telling a story about running away when I was a kid. My grandfather told me that 5-year-olds would get arrested if they cross the street. And so I was afraid to cross the street when I ran away from home, and I would just walk up and down, back and forth across the front of the yard when I ran away. And somebody was laughing about that and said, you should do a book on runaway stories. So it got more gritty than it did from that little funny story, And so I worked with Lee Zacharias and Michael Gills, and we put that book together. And then I was listening to a podcast, or listening to a master class online, and with Joyce Carol Oates, and she was talking about writing taboos, and I thought, what a great idea, and so it just kind of evolved. All of them just kind of evolved, but they're the kind of stories I like to read and try to write myself. So
Well, okay, so I'm sorry you had to run away from home. Tell me, what was going on that made you feel like you couldn't stay?
I had a pretty good childhood. It's not like that. But I was a stubborn little kid, and I'm still a stubborn little adult now, and I always wanted my way. And so I would run away from home every now and then, just to, because I'd get mad at mom, and so I'd take off. So that story's not gritty, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess is the better word to say it. But, it's just me being a little brat more than anything else.
So when you would run away, how long would you stay gone? Where would you go?
I would go to the edge of the yard as close as I could get to the street. I had a dog that wouldn't let me get very close to the street because she'd had a puppy that got run over. So she would stay between me and the street and run away with me. And she'd push against me if I got too close to the street for her taste and push me back into the yard. And so I just walked back and forth with my little Barbie case filled with t-shirts, it wasn't running away. It was just me as a kid thinking I was running away more than anything else.
Okay, so then the people who you find for these books, so is these are all true stories or is any of it fiction?
Mostly it's fiction. Mostly it's fiction. With Taboos, we've got a couple of true stories in there, but for the most part, they're fictional stories. And we just, that's what I write and that's what I taught for a long time. And so that's what I lean towards, but we did have a couple of true stories come in for Taboos, and that in particular was a good addition to the piece. I think we had one or two true stories with Runaway, and we definitely got a couple in Muddy Backroads that are true stories as well. So
Okay, so for the ones who are the true stories, did you find that what did they say that they got out of sharing the stories with you? Did they achieve any sort of like emotional release from
oh,
it?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. They got a emotional release, a psychological release from being able to write their stories and share it. They also wanted to reach out to people who had had similar stories, and let them know that you can get through it, whatever it happens to be, and you can survive it, even if it's something of your own making that is a taboo that you broke, but you can manage it. And so they definitely wanted to exercise their own demons at the same time that they wanted to reach out and make other people feel what they had been through to some extent.
Hmm. So then I'm curious. So the two that we're going to be talking about later, in particular, that stood out to me is one is called from the Taboos and Transgressions book, and one is called Exit Stage by I think it was Chavis Woods, and then the other one is The Tower of Good Families by Sanaya Kamal. Are either one of those a true story that you remember?
The one from Kamal is a true story. Yeah. The, what is it called? Tao of
The Tower of Good Families.
Good Families. Yeah. And yeah, that one is a nonfiction all the way through. So that was her story, her experience.
Yeah, it read very real, and I was very, very drawn to that. So I can't wait to dive into that one. So of all the books that you've come across and written of the true stories that you've heard, which one was the darkest one or the one that stood out to you the most?
Well, that one's an empowering story, the one you mentioned before. I think that the darker ones are the ones where they're dealing with sexual abuse in some way, or uh, parental abandonment, that type of thing. And a lot of those stories people write into memoir, they haven't necessarily sent into these particular anthologies. But I don't know if Shavisa Woods' piece on Exit Stage is true or not, but I know that she grew up in a small middle America town as a gay punk kid. And so she had it rough for a while, with that sort of being judged situation. And so I think that the story Exit Stage hits close to home, though I don't know that it is true. I think it hits close to home in terms of what her life was like growing up in middle America, outwardly gay and outwardly, with the shaved hair and, you know, trying to live her life authentically as she wanted to, but she would go into St. Louis to find people like her, herself, and then she would deal with the bullies when she got back home. And so it was a tough existence, I think, and that's a very common thing, unfortunately. I think, and so I think that her writing is something that's very important. She's got a couple of books out, and I think they're very important in terms of the statement they make about the trying to grow up a little bit different. So,
Now, where do you find people to submit their true stories for these books? Is there like some sort of forum or a hub, or is it just like through word of mouth? Or
a lot of social media, a lot of word of mouth. There's a big conference of writers called AWP that happens every spring. Of course, with COVID, it's been virtual, but that's where you connect up with a lot of people and get the word out that you're looking for stories. And then I also solicited some stories. So I solicited the piece, asked Shavisa to send me a piece if she would, and she sent in Exit Stage. And I have asked Luis Alberto Yarria is giving us one for Backroads that I'm working on now. That's a true story. It's a funny story, but it's a true story about trying to find Lake Walton and ended up at a cow pond instead. And so it's combination of asking writers that I know, writers that I'm interested in, and then also just getting word out through social media as much as possible that we're looking for manuscripts. And we do a little write up to tell everybody what we're looking for, and then they decide whether or not to submit based on that.
okay, now yeah, I heard you use the word gritty a couple of times. So
Yeah,
what is gritty to you? Like what do you mean by that exactly?
doesn't pull punches. Doesn't back off of the tough subjects, doesn't back off of anything, makes a point of going on through and telling the story, whether the story is hard to tell or hard to read or disturbing in some way. We certainly have a couple of stories in Taboos that are disturbing stories, certainly not feel good stories at all, and that's the kind of stuff I like to read. It's as a Southern writer myself, there's an area of Southern writing that's referred to as grit lit. And grit lit is the tougher side of writing, and that's where you find Dorothy Allison and writers like that write sort of sometimes a poor experience growing up in the South, sometimes the experience of just trying to survive in a rural environment without having much to live on, and the grit lit is what I gravitate towards because in some ways I had a great childhood. I did grow up blue collar and I did grow up without a lot of things. And it's just something that speaks to me a little bit, I think.
And speaking of when you were growing up, I read about when I was researching you, I read about you where you felt like you had more tattoos than your mother approved of. Did-
Yeah.
When did you start to get tattoos? At what age?
I was about 30, I think, when I got my first one, but that would have been 1989. So I kind of hit it just as the trend was starting, I think. Though I was older than most of the people that were getting tattoos at that time. And I got my first one, and now I've got 10 to 12, including a sleeve on one arm, and just got a new one on the wrist about 2 months ago. So tend to keep going, with those tattoos now. Yeah, and that was a little bit of a different thing to do if you're a college professor, but that's just who I am, and I appreciate anybody who lives authentically and is true to themselves, and I've tried to live my life that way as well. Sometimes you rub people the wrong way when you do that, but that's tough. This is me, this is who I am, kind of thing.
Yeah, so keeping going with the tattoos, there was some sort of issue that you had in the early 90s. As I understand that there was some problems with like the students and the staff at a university. Like you just said, it's not really a thing a college professor does. What sort of controversy happened over your tattoos at work?
They had a little bit of an issue with me being tattooed, with having specifically having tattoos that show. They didn't feel like it was a very professional thing, and it was mentioned to me a few times. Nobody ever came down on me in terms of I might lose my job or something like that, but it was kind of one of those sideways conversations that I had with people that were over me in terms of, you know, who they are. And then you have most of the time the students were cool with it. They didn't care, but the staff that wanted me to look professional and that type of thing. I wore jeans and t-shirts and sneakers and had tattoos. I never looked professional a day in my life as far as I know. Because it's just me, but I think when you teach creative writing, you need to be a little bit more informal because the students are critiquing each other's work and it's got to be a comfortable environment for them. So for me to be there living my life the way I choose to live it, it brought out their possibilities for living their own lives. They saw that in somebody that was an authority figure. And I think it helped a couple of students, but I might just be patting myself on the back. I don't know. But I think it did help with a couple of students who thought, well, she can be in this position and have the tattoos and dress the way she dresses and be true to herself, then I can be true to myself too and make a living and be the person I want to be. So, that was the message I was trying to send out. And I think it did help with a couple of students, even if my bosses didn't approve too much.
How do you know they didn't approve? What did they say to you?
They would ask me if there was a certain kind of meeting to cover up so that my tattoos didn't show, or they would ask me to, they called me the wild child, and there are just a couple of things that, they would say to me that sort of let me know that they weren't approving of this. They would say, "Oh, another tattoo, Luanne, huh?" And it was looking down their nose at me for doing that kind of thing. It's changing now. There are a lot of younger professors who come in with all kinds of tattoos. So this was just sort of a 90s thing where they were reacting and didn't quite know what to do with a tattooed professor. Now they've got a lot more tattooed professors than what they ever expected, I think. So it's acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of how when it's almost like a uniform violation that they kind of were treating you, so you weren't meeting the code in
Exactly.
dress,
Yeah.
dress and appearance. Hmm. Yeah, pretty much every job I've ever had, I had some sort of snafu in terms of dress and appearance. And this is like one of the main reasons I'm glad I don't work around people anymore because I just don't have the tolerance for the bullshit. So when I was in the
Mhm.
military, I had piercings. So that's when I started hanging out in tattoo shops and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a family community vibe in those tattoo shops and stuff like that. Not to mention that they can get addictive. I never got a tattoo. I was more of a piercer. I was into the
Yeah.
but I almost got kicked out of the military for wearing piercings in uniform and stuff like that. I knew it was wrong, but I was like, fuck it. And maybe there's a common thread there, commonality amongst people who like to get piercings and tattoos who tend to have kind of like a fuck it mentality.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope I have a bucket mentality.
And then I also I always used to wear button down shirts because I had these like jobs that was like more like white collar and stuff, and I used to like always undo like the first 3 4 buttons so I can have like a lot of my chest out because I was a vain young,
Uh-huh.
very vain, very very vain young man. And hey, it was what it was. I always likes to have the chesticles out,
Uh-huh.
working a little side boob here and there when I worked at the I worked at the call center at Centerpoint Energy in Houston, Texas, and the floor managers would come around and tell me, make me button my shirt up and shit. all the time, and it's like, "Fuck you, bitch." So, you're already tied down to the damn phone. You can't get up and go piss or, like, jerk off or nothing without falling out of the damn phone, and now you can't have your titties out if you want to. Oh, this is just repression worse. And so, but then my boss and I worked for the Texas Workforce Commission was totally cool about it. Hey, I was meeting my number. She didn't give a shit if I had my tits out. She was like, I think they look great. Go for it. So, and so I'll never forget her. She was a good, good, good fucking boss. One of the few that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little tirade there. So you've written all these books. You have like blogs and stuff on your website. Is there
Mhm.
things you want your readers to learn and gain from the body of work that you have?
Well, we've been talking about it, that authenticity, that be true to yourself, and that's, I think, more what I try to say with my own work than anything else. And I think one of my teachers a long time ago, when I was a creative writing student, said my characters are all sort of these alienated individuals, and I think he was right about that because they're trying to live a life that a lot of normal society or whatever you want to call it doesn't necessarily accept. And I think that that's going up against the grain there is something that's common thread in my work and in what I like to read, and it's not intentional. It's just what comes out when I sit down to write. It's just what I like to read, and I don't do it as a political statement. I do it as someone who's just always been a little bit different and always will be a little bit different. And just keep going with that. Those are the people I gravitate towards are ones that are who they are, you know?
I want to know. So, have you ever had anyone who has read any of your books reach out to you and give you a testimony of how their life changed?
Had students do that for sure, and they've either read some of my work or they've been in my class where they've heard me talk about pushing the story to be what it needs to be. I've had students come out as gay in my class. I've had students tell me afterwards that they've changed their mind for what they want to do with their career because it's never what they wanted to do anyway. And so I've had this students certainly follow their own lives a little bit more closely after being in class. I'm not trying to paint myself as any kind of hero or anything like that. It's just that I think if you're doing it right as a teacher, you do more than just teach what's in the books to learn. You teach something about life lessons as well, and if you reach some students, that's great. That's great. This is one of the reasons I'd never be able to teach in high school because parents would be after me all the time with with what I want to do.
So when you say they came out as gay, so did they like stand up in the middle of class and be like, "Hey, I want everyone to know that I'm gay"? How exactly did they come out?
In their work, in their writing, they came out as gay in their writing and came up and told me and asked if it was okay for them to share this work that, and would tell me this first time they're telling anybody about this. And I would say, okay, well, we'll be very gentle and not critique too hard and make sure that this is a comfortable space for you, and it was usually a very accepting space for them. And so they, I definitely had I would say probably over the years, 4 or 5 students that came out in the class through their writing.
So how many students were in the class, average size?
Average size of the class was about 20 students per class.
So they were reading what they had written out loud for everyone else?
They passed out copies of what they had written, and everybody had copies and to take home and read, and write their responses on the stories, you know, and then we'd come back the next week and talk about the stories. and make suggestions if we felt like anything needed to be changed.
Well, hot damn, a literary coming out.
Yeah.
Hey, that takes a lot of braveness. I think braveness is the word. It takes a lot of braveness and boldness to come out in any kind of way. If you feel like that's something that you want to do, then perhaps you could write about it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so let me think about this. So I guess if there's someone out there who feels like they need to come out and they don't want to tell whoever, maybe they could write a nice story, write it out,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
like that. It's a little bit more thorough than like a text, sitting a text would be, kind of like a personal letter to somebody.
Yeah, a personal letter, uh, even a fictional story is a release of everything you've been holding in, and so I think that it's voice. It's a matter of voice. It's being able to speak and speak a truth that you experience, and I think that that's part of the reason I like the gritty stuff. It speaks the truth that's not out there very much, and I think that part of my own writing, I think, is trying to speak a truth about the way I see the world, the way I see people, and I certainly think coming out in your writing is a way to get your voice out there.
Okay, so if someone's listening to this and they're saying, "Shit, that sounds like a good idea, but I'm not a great writer." What advice would you give to people in order to encourage them to hone their writing skills in this sort, or to this doesn't have to be like something that's going to be like, oh, a great manifesto or anything like that. Is there any advice you would give to people who may feel insecure about their ability to write effectively?
Yep, read. The more
What?
you read, the people you read, they're your teachers more than anybody standing up in front of a classroom. They'll teach you how to put the my dog's barking in the background. Sorry about that. They're the ones who'll teach you how to create the sentence that says what it needs to say. And so yeah, read as much as possible. Find the genre of writing that speaks to you and read as much as possible within that genre. And that's where you're going to learn to write. Even in my composition classes, I could usually tell which students were readers and which ones weren't because of their skill levels. And so it's very much a important aspect of writing is to be a reader as well.
Then I would add to that, just start, even if you don't think it's going to come
Oh,
out
absolutely.
as polished or as nice sounding, just fucking begin.
Yeah,
Because you never know where it could go. And you're going to have to go back and redo it anyway. When I write, I like to just get something out there and then go back and then rearrange it and everything like that. And then begins kind of to be like putting a puzzle together in a way. And it gets to be fun and very relaxing.
absolutely. Absolutely. I always told my students that it was like throwing the clay on the pot on the wheel, that you don't have the clay on the wheel to start with until you have a first draft of something, and then you start shaping it. Then you start making it into something. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Just start. Just do it.
And a good outline helps, even if it's a simple, basic outlining. It starts with the basic
Hmm.
skeleton of an outline, and then you come back and add to each bullet point, uh,
Yeah,
later on. So yeah, so it's good to break it down into small, chompable little parts rather than looking at the whole big monster at one time because that could be overwhelming.
absolutely. And don't think about people reading it the first draft, or just think about what you want to say, and then worry about people reading it and that sort of thing after you get that first draft out there. Say what you need to say first.
Right. And then you can be like, bitch, I said what I said.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because on my memoir that's getting ready to come out, praise God, I think next month is going for
Oh, awesome.
it's going for formatting in a week. And so, but I think I'm on like the eighth edit of it.
Mhm.
So I never would have thought, but it takes a lot of editing and a lot of relooking and relooking and relooking. But this is
It
for like a
does.
full memoir. If you're just trying to write a coming out story, honey, you only need a good page or two. You know,
Yeah.
you don't need a whole 300-page manifesto like what my memoir is. Like it's not. You not need to do all that. Now, I think coming out is a beautiful thing for those people who choose to do it. I never did it because I have a different personality about that. I don't like to explain myself to people, but people have different value systems and different sort of communities and social backgrounds that they're coming from. So I get that too. So if somebody is listening and they're kind of like me and they're like, my attitude was like this. If my family can't look at all of this that's going on over here and you can't figure out that I'm not straight, then I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you because this is abundantly clear over here. So I never bothered with coming out. I just started showing up with guys like, yeah, either you accept this or you don't. If you don't, then fuck you.
Sure.
You
Sure.
just get the fuck. So, but I know that there's very masculine men out there, for instance, who are not feminine at all, and can't nobody look at them and tell they're not straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't really have the luxury of being like, well, they should just be able to know that I'm not straight because he's so like macho and so masculine, so machismo and everything. So
Still a personal choice. So, I mean, like I said, I think you're living true to yourself. You're living to what you want to do, and if you want to come out in whatever way, great. If you are not comfortable doing that or you want to keep to yourself in ways, then that's living true to yourself too. So it's definitely personal choice.
so so I just kind of want to like gotta swerve back to something I asked about earlier, where you had made that statement and whatever it is I was reading about, where your mother, you had more tattoos than your mother would approve of. Was that just kind of like a general funny statement you were making, or did she actually say something about your tattoo?
She would say with a cringe on her face, "It's pretty." Every time I showed her a new one, she would no, that was not a thing that she approved of at all. And I think my dad had already passed away when I got my first one because he would have been absolutely upset about it. No, it's you know she was okay. I got one on my ankle, first one, and one or two here or there. She was like, "Well, they don't show that much, so if that's okay." But now that I have ones that are very blatantly out there, I think she would not approve of that at all. It's just, why do you want to mark yourself up like that, kind of thing.
Yeah, when I was growing up in church, they would tell us not to get in the Pentecostal church, which I recommend to no one. They would tell us, everything's wrong, everything's the devil, piercings, tattoos, and stuff like that. And then they would use scripture about, well, the Lord says your body is a temple, so therefore you should respect it. And getting tattoos and piercings,
Mhm.
the way of disrespecting your body. Okay, so what one would consider to be disrespectful or not is subjective. And so when people say like your mom, like the people at church and everything, look at people with tattoos and want to judge them and everything like that, I think it's bullshit. And I think that it's reflective of people being made uncomfortable by things that is just not like them.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree, totally that, they disapprove for whatever their personal reasons are, and a lot of it has to do with, "Well, you're not acting the way I act. You're not, seeing the world the way I see it," and so therefore you're wrong and you're bad and all these other things, and unfortunately, I think that that's very much how our society is right now, and that's why I think, finding people who are true to themselves is a rarity, in some ways, and I appreciate that. So,
And so I want to offer this nugget of liberty to people out there, which I don't know how many conservative people would be listening to my show anyway, but just in case somebody might be considering abandoning their conservative ways, you can look at something or someone, and, you don't really have to have an opinion about it one way or the other.
yeah.
You don't have to like it or dislike it. You don't have to approve of it or disapprove of it. It could just exist and just leave it the fuck at that. Like you don't have to
Yeah, yeah.
do anything. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to react. So I would say to Republicans, because I like to throw shade at Republicans, is they're the epitome of hypocrisy, judgment, and being judgmental and all of that. So if a woman wants to get an abortion, not your fucking business, bitch. If two,
Yeah, exactly.
if two men want to get married, not your fucking business, hoe. If somebody wants to get tattoos, shut the fuck up about it and go to it doesn't matter.
Mind your business, live your life. I agree. Couldn't you said it perfectly.
And so, but I think a lot of people who judge people don't understand just how wrapped up in bondage they are by projecting that sort of judgment onto people because you can't give away what you don't have. So in order for you to try to corral and control people and force them to live like you want them to live means that you are in bondage yourself.
Absolutely.
And so you're not really free. Confident, secure, free people are like, say, our straight allies who are like, well, I don't care if they're gay or not, doesn't affect me. I got other shit to do. That
Mhm.
person is free. It
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't strike a chord in them if they see people living their life over there across the street somewhere. They don't feel enraged like they've got to go and do something about it because they are at one within themselves. The Republicans are not at one within themselves. You know,
Mm.
conservative people who want to comment on people's tattoos, who think someone's skirt's too short, who don't understand the concept of sex positivity, and different things like that, because you know what? They have hell within themselves. They are not whole, therefore they cannot allow other people to just fucking be happy.
Right.
They're
Right.
than happy. That's where
Yeah.
it starts. The people are miserable. The Republicans are just fucking miserable lot. They're just unhappy, the lot of them. And so,
They live by a lot of rules. Yeah. You know,
but
and
go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the things I learned in putting that taboos anthology together was the number of rules we have out there about how you're supposed to live your life, and just how ridiculous it is. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, you know,
Right.
be yeah.
But but the Lord, as much as he's not really as for rules as people try to make him seem. Because,
Yeah.
Jesus, when he was here, and let me see, there was an instance that happened in the Old Testament when David was becoming king and he was on the run. He made his way to the temple and he ate of the holy food. He wasn't a priest. The
Mhm.
people with him weren't a priest. It was against the rules, but it was allowed to happen anyway. And when Jesus was here on the earth, he referenced back to that story because the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious people of the day, the conservative Christian leaders of his day, were trying to tell him what you're doing is against the rules, sir. And he was like, but God didn't make people for rules. Rules were made for people. And so
Yeah.
you adjust those rules and you do whatever it takes to keep people in community. You don't be a stickler for the rules to the and then you exile people and discard people, but the rules stay intact.
Yeah.
That's not of God. And so when we get these fundamentalist people, like a certain Supreme Court justice, Amy Coney Barrett, you fucking cunt, and you know, and then, different people like that who want to force the world to stay in original rules, no matter what, with not even a modicum of flexibility. That is not the way God works. And that is not the way he wants us to work with people. He wants us to take a second look at things, to readjust our views as time goes on and not be rigid and unmovable.
Right. Right. No, and you absolutely got it right. I think that I grew up in the South and I grew up in the Bible Belt, and my dog is throwing a fit. I'm so sorry. But
That's all right, baby.
yeah, uh, you know, you interpret the Bible the way you want to interpret a lot of people, I think. I know, and so if they want to say these are the rules we live by because that's how Christ said to do it, maybe look again at the Bible and what it actually says because it's a little bit, interpreted wrong a lot of the time, I think.
I'm gonna just say this, and then we're gonna move on to the Tower of Good Families. When it
Uh-huh.
when it comes to, and I don't mind the dog. You know what? People like a good organic conversation in this thing, and especially since the coronavirus came to town, everything's done over Zoom from home. So people got all kind of dolls, cats, kids, fucking Jeopardy playing in the background, all kinds of things going on. It is what it is. So I was gonna say, yeah, the crazy world we live in, people who tout the name of God are also flinging AK-40 fucking assault rifles and shit from the pulpit, your conservative Christian people. And then we have our Jerry Falwell Juniors, to be more specific, actually. I don't know that much about his dad, but I'm just going to put this out there. Mr. Falwell Jr. decided to come out in his own right in an article disavowing everything that he's basically done in terms of religion. He was like, I'm not spiritual. There was pressure on me to be spiritual. So yeah, that's why it's because the pool boy scandal caught up and then the picture with him with his pants open with some woman who's not his wife and all that. And so he finally broke.
Mhm.
He was like, yeah, it was all a ruse anyway. It was bullshit. Fuck all this church shit. And so
Yeah.
y'all can go and look that up and then take a look and question yourself thoroughly as to why you pay attention to conservative Christian people who call themselves Christians in the news today because they're full of shit. And so,
Yeah. Yep.
but keeping in line with religion, the Tower of Good Families by Sanaya Kamal was, I think that's a beautiful name, Soniahkamal. This story
Yeah.
is in Pakistan, and that
Mhm.
happening. And the story opens with her mother holding her wooden prayer beads and shit like that, which was beautiful imagery in the sense that it's true.
Yeah.
So right there, you got like probably an overly religious woman, already from the get go. And this woman is telling her daughter not to talk to boys, yada yada yada, whoop de woo, because in a lot of overseas religions, men are put on a fucking pedestal and women are like underneath the dirt somewhere, you even
Right.
lower than that. And honestly, in a lot of ways, that's how Christianity used to be. You know, I don't know if I wouldn't say it was to that extent, but say like in the Bible, say women weren't counted. So when you see like tallies of numbers of people, they don't include females. They only counted the men, so there's
Mhm.
that, although the Bible is a Middle Eastern text, it's not American, although some people try to act like we wrote the book. We did not. It's from the Middle East. And
Mhm.
so you have that influence going on. And so in this story here, this mother's telling her daughter all about what she can't do because basically she's a female and she has these expectations that are being levied upon her and everything like that. But what I love about this story is this girl is clapping back at her parents, at her mother, and she's challenging them. So I'm going to read an excerpt from this.
Sure.
But she says, where in the Quran does it say girls can't smoke and boys can? Where in the Quran does it say boys can go topless, but girls can't? Where in the Quran does it say that my brother can have a telephone installed in his room, but I can't even get one, even though I'm 9 years older than him? And she says she has yet to receive a proper answer. All she gets are baleful gazes and admonitions to stop asking stupid questions.
Yeah.
Say what you want to say about that, because I got a lot to say.
I would say that to some extent that's the heart of the story, and the girl or she keeps it's not a fictional piece, it's a memoir, and she keeps pushing and rebelling to the point where I mean, she's talking to boys almost immediately in the memoir, and then she has a boyfriend, and she hears this rumor about the boyfriend's mother, and if she were a good girl, she wouldn't have been in this situation at all. But she's saying, why does it say I have to act this certain way? Where does it say that I have to act like this, like you said? And so I'm dying to hear what you have to say. So have at it, baby.
Well, it reminds me of when I was growing up in church and they would tell us you're not supposed to drink and dance, masturbate. I would be like, where in the Bible does it say that I can't drink, for instance? I can see it arguing against access that I mean excess that makes sense because being drunk is not really all that fun. So, I was just told to basically just be quiet and do what they say. And so there's a rise in people, and this is why people break away from religion, is because when we see inaccuracies, things that don't add up and we question it, we're told to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
When I was in seminary, before I left, the fucking professor just straight up admitted, he was like, "Yeah, we intend to control the congregation." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's what we do here. That we want to control the congregation." I think he was coming from a Baptist background.
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, this is why movies like The Golden Compass never got a second a sequel, because movies like that are all about, like, religious control."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's like this is why, like, in my ministry, my main encouragement to people is to break away from the need of, like, say, pastors and preachers to interpret scripture and stuff like that. So if you're gonna follow the Quran, if you're gonna follow the Hebrew Bible, and people are coming up with laws and shit that they can't justify with scripture, then why the fuck are you doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Now at least the Quran, the people who read it in its original language,
Mm-hmm.
Luanne, but the Bible, this Hebrew Bible here that Americans use and people use is not even written in its original language.
No.
3 languages. The Old Testament is Hebrew and Aramaic, and the New Testament is Greek. And I don't know very many people who actually have read it in its native tongue. And so at best, most people who have these staunch beliefs and shit like that are getting them derived from somebody else's interpretation of someone else's book.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly how it is. It's an interpretation, and how do I tell this story in another language? But you got somebody else's opinions coming in when they translate work, and so it's you don't know. You have no idea how much of their own opinion they put in there when they translate it, and so you know.
Mhm.
Uh, the original language is how you should read it if possible, you know?
In this day and time, you can just Google single passages. Like, what does this part say in the original language, or what's some commentary on that? You got to dig deeper. You never want to
Mhm.
preacher, because preachers cannot separate their upbringing and their personal belief systems from their message. They don't. It's all infused into it, but it's sold to you as a divine message from God, and it is not. It's a lot of what that preacher thinks. Because if you listen to what preachers say, they'll often say things like, especially when they're challenged on something that they've said, they'll say, "Well, I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't brought up that way." Whenever Joel Osteen from Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, was first asked about his stance on homosexuality, and maybe on the interview that him and Victoria, his wife, did on Larry King, I believe that was one of his responses, like he wasn't brought up that way. But see, the thing is, and I can talk about, that church, because that's the church that I was ministering at before I got kicked out for not being straight. So I'll talk all the shit about them that I want.
Yeah.
Um, but the point is, like, okay, you're supposed to be a preacher. We don't give a damn about who you were brought up. Your job is to get your fucking ass up there and tell us what thus saith the Lord, not what
Yeah.
thus say it, not what thus say it your upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, and by that logic, then everyone should just do what the fuck they were raised as. But he's not the first preacher I've heard say that. They said that all in the Pentecostal church throughout my whole life, because they would say it in response to, like, their criticism of someone else. They'll be like, "Well, those Catholics over there, or those Baptist people over there, or those gay people over there, or those drug addicts over there, they're living in sin. I wasn't brought up that way. I just don't understand what they're doing." Well, bitch, you don't have to. And I've already discussed earlier why it's not a necessity for us to understand everybody else. But this girl in this book is breaking away from the control that this religion is trying to have over.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so many people don't. And then what happens is we end up living fake. We end up regressing into ourselves. Okay, this translates into suicide, depression, anxiety. A lot of the problems we have in this world today that are being treated with medicine really result from a lack of true self love and self acceptance. And a lot of it starts with religion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're very, very right about that, and a lot of it starts with being brought up a certain way, and that not being who you are, and kind of feeling the bondage, and not knowing how to break out of it.
Well, that's why I do my podcast. That's why I've written my memoir, which is, as you would say, grit. It's full of a lot of grit and everything like that. And
Awesome.
in 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 order to try to help people break free of this, because I see it so much. I'm a licensed massage therapist. People would come to me for massages, but they would tell me all their personal problems. And it's the same thing. People are so unhappy,
Yeah.
and your book serves the same purpose. You're basically laying out a whole bunch of situations where people were not happy.
Right, right. Yeah.
But
You're
what did they
very right
do
about that.
about it? What did they do
Yeah.
about it? So how did it change?
Yeah.
So if we're unhappy, we can't stay that way. Something's got to give. I'm going to read a little bit more from Sanaya's story here because I absolutely love the way that this read. She can
Good.
she continues. Furthermore, I do not have a natural aversion to siren songsters such as Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, and Samantha Fox. This worries my mother to no end, and she often remarks, which good family will accept the Madonna type as their daughter in law? My mother is far from impressed when I say that I might not accept such a prudish family. I tend to look up to the likes of Madonna, a fact that upsets my mother most of all since everyone and anyone can see my supposed loose morals in my neon leggings, my tie-dye t-shirts under which I wear a black bra, my six earrings in each ear, which I pierced myself, my bright red henna dyed hair. In fact, one of the reasons my mother gave permission to me to attend is I don't know what L is. To attend L is because they have maybe that's a school there. To attend L is because they have a uniform of sorts. The only colors permitted are unembellished khaki, whites, and reds, and also no Western wear for girls. So she's referring to like 1980s, 1990s Madonna there with the tie dye, with
Oh,
the
yeah.
everything.
Neon side-eye.
Oh, she gave me so much life. I was like, "Come on, Madonna, look." I know like Madonna has been getting a lot of shade from the gay community lately for this and that, but Madonna could give two fucks less about
That's
anything.
true. That's what makes her who she is.
She's like, "I don't give a fuck. I'm Madonna, bitch." Or as her song said, bitch, I'm Madonna." And oh my God, this girl is just giving me so much life. So she's bringing Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, a gay icon, fag hag realness. I don't think fag has is a derogatory term. Some people in some parts of the world think fag has is meant insultingly. I do not. If you think fag hag is a bad word, I'll say I'm sorry for that. But it's not meant in a negative way. And so, but yeah, Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, some of the world's greatest fag hags. She's trying to do this in the middle of a Quran run society. I
Yep.
don't I
Yep.
don't know if she ever moved away from there. Do you know that she still
Yeah,
lives?
she's in America now. I don't remember where exactly, but she's teaches writing in America now. So she's and very successful writer.
Yeah, that's another thing I found interesting about this book. I could tell it's different writing styles across each of the stories, and there's a good like 20 stories I think in this.
Yeah.
It,
Uh-huh.
it's different writing styles, so it will appeal to very many different readers and different backgrounds and different lifestyles. So I'm glad that she left. I'm very, very glad that she left. And so I would I would I would preach that message to people too. people who are the black sheeps out there, like I'm a total black sheep and I love it. It's like probably my favorite thing about myself. I love being weird. I love being different. I don't want to do normal because it's boring and overrated and it's not even attractive. Ugh. So, but instead of trying to force an institution or a group of people to like you, and my
Mhm.
God's sake, you're not going to ever try to change yourself so they can accept you because they never will because they don't like themselves. That's why they're trying to change you. Leave if you can, and it may take some planning, some preparation and prayer and all of that and saving up
Yep.
money. Don't stay. It's like, let me say this and I'm hush, and then so you can talk. But it's like gay people, non-straight people, our straight allies. If you're setting up in a church that is anti-LGBT2S LGBTQIA plus, they don't like gay people, they don't think women should get abortions. They got this shit you don't like. And I've done this. I've sat there too because I felt like I needed to be at church because why? Because people told me I should. Go somewhere else. Go to a gay affirming church. Go to places that you have people who are going to support you and celebrate you rather than to attack your lifestyle and stuff like that. And then, because you're hurting yourself. If you're not straight, why sit there and listen to a preacher say that you're going to go to hell? Now we rationalize it and we go, okay, well, I'll disagree with them on that, but I agree with everything else. And we make concessions for it. Why? We shouldn't stay in abusive relationships. We shouldn't stay in abusive churches, abusive companies, organizations. If the whole thing isn't positive, well, nothing's fully positive. Let me not say that. If there's something that's a personal attack against you or what you believe in, then you should go. But what do you think? Because that's what I'm seeing. She left overseas and came to a place where she could thrive rather than trying to stay.
Oh, I completely agree with that. In a similar vein, I guess, when I was a kid, it was in the '60s, and we were living in a small town in Kentucky, and our church, Southern Methodist Church, was a very small community, very small congregation, but a black couple wanted to join the church. First black couple to ask to join the church, and the elders did not want, since the '60s, the elders did not want black couple in the church. And my parents, who I would never say were activists in any way, my parents left the church at that time. And God bless them for that, because they saw something where they said, this is not the right church for us that doesn't accept people, no matter what. And they left the church, and it had been a big part of our lives, that church had been. And, for them to walk away at that point, I noticed, even though I was only like 6 years old, I noticed and I understood why. And I think it had a big impact on who I became as time went on, exactly. If it's, I like what you said, if it's an abusive church or an abusive situation, and abuse comes in many forms, then walk away from it. And I think if, that's right on. If you can do it, if you can get away, get away. And my parents taught me that. That's great, you know.
Right. My boyfriend's mom did that for him and his brother when they were younger. I don't think they even had a chance to come out or say anything, but mothers know when they have gay children. They just do. So when she had them in a church at first, and maybe it was
Mhm.
Catholic, but when they started preaching against the gayness, she was like, "Oh hell no, I'm taking my children away from this," and they just never went back to any church at all because why keep your kids in a situation like that where they're gonna get hurt. It's something I wish,
Yeah.
my mom did the best job she knew how to do with her own set of circumstances, and I'm not mad at her, and I don't hold anything against her, but knowing what I know now as an adult, I wish that she would not have kept me in a church where they were preaching against homosexuality,
Right.
you know,
Right.
or against really anything. I don't wanna go to church to hear how much you hate some person or some group of people. That's not what it's about. And,
Right.
you know, I wish that my mom would have divorced my dad because he
Mhm.
had, as I understand it, he had an affair. when she was pregnant with me, and he definitely had one when I was in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course he would be very, physically and verbally abusive to myself and my siblings, and then verbally abusive to my mother as well. Just a mean fucking man. And I looked at his affairs as a way out, because according to Jesus, once you're married, if you get divorced for any reason other than infidelity, that he considers you an adulterer, doesn't no matter what.
Right, right. Yeah.
I get the straight conservative church world get divorced all the time, and that seems to be cool with them. But then they want to turn around and attack gay people, and that's a whole other story there. But I feel like God was giving her a way out. I wish He had taken us out of that abusive home, you know,
Yeah.
instead trying to make it work. The other option is to find a better atmosphere. You got to
Right.
stay
Yeah.
when to go, when to stay, when to go. And so, oh my God. Mm, so I'll just recap that. We always want to be sure that we challenge thinking, challenge anything anyone else is telling us. Let's fact check it, because we don't want to put ourselves in a place where we're going to be living a lie. Whatever we want to live, be sure it's our own truth, not someone else's. Let's put our,
Yeah.
let's put ourselves in places where we have freedom of expression, so that we will not
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
oppressed. That way we have good mental health. We have joy to share with the world. We're being the truth. We're living our truth, and we are, we're not living a lie, because that shit will show up later with bad health. It can manifest in your body, in different ways like that. It's a very dangerous thing to live a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. And I think my parents did inadvertently teach me that, though they didn't realize that's the lesson I was getting from that, I think. But I think from then on, I was like, well, stay away from the lies. Be who you are. Be who you are and try to live authentically.
Hmm. And so then the last thing we'll talk quickly about with exit stage. A lot this reads really It reads really real to me. You said you weren't sure if it's fiction or nonfiction. It sounds very nonfiction-y to me, because I've lived through this life before. We're talking about snorting cocaine, and this little snippet that I took, I thought it was kind of cool because of its accuracy. And so I'll just read through it real quick. And so it opens up with someone talking. It says, "Never snort cocaine out of any bill smaller than a 20." The old man told her. That's lame. That's some loser shit right there. He took a drag of his cigarette and reached into his back pocket, retrieving a crisp $50 bill, and held it between his fingers and snapped it in her face so that it popped. "Hey, girl, use this. That's what you want to do your first line out of." Oh, she reached out and took the bill. "Go easy on her. She don't know no better," her mother told him, patting her daughter on the back. And so this is a a cool story here of a mom, watching her daughter do a couple lines of cocaine, and then whoever
Mhm.
whoever this guy is being like, "Don't be a weak ass bitch. You don't be lame. You don't do that shit out of like something greater than a 20," which is real as fuck. We always
Oh, yeah.
you always wanna roll up like $100 bill or something. You wanna just be like Tony Montana with this shit. Let's go Scarface with it. If we're gonna do it at all. But she said she had a rough upbringing. I read that with glee, but it's not necessarily the best situation for, a mother to be encouraging her daughter to do cocaine. I'm not judging her for it, but you know,
Well, it's the same thing, though. I mean, she's doing it because her mother wants her to, and she wants to be a part of her mother's life. Does she really wanna do it? Is that really who she is? We don't know, and I think it's a lot. I think that has the ending of that story says a lot, where she is obviously trying to please her mother and be close to her mother through her actions, and so there's a little bit of a problem there with that. Rather than being true to herself, she's being who she thinks her mother wants her to be, you know?
right.
It's kind of the opposite of the other story that you liked, in terms of what the daughter's doing, but it's the same, same idea in some ways. Do I please mom or do I please myself? And in this one, she tries to please mom. It's just that mom is into cocaine rather than the Quran.
Well, religion's just as much of a drug.
Oh, yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
People try to throw so much shade at like drug addicts and stuff like that. And look, I've been that addict with a needle hanging out my arm and blood squirting everywhere. And I'm not even fucking ashamed to say that. But, religion is dope. It's fucking, like, I mean that negatively. It's like a drug. People get obsessed and addicted to the process and to the ritual, just like it's like a dope fiend gets addicted to the process and the ritual of acquiring drugs, setting it all up, injecting it. People get high when they go to church every time, and then they want to force that shit on other people. It's
Yeah.
no different. Now it's cute. It's a cute addiction because you're not covered in tattoos in a grimy place with a needle hanging out your arm and a belt wrapped around your bicep to get the veins popped up. And you don't have track marks all up and down your fucking body because you're trying to shoot up in all kinds of different places that you've blown out all the veins in your arm. You get to put on a pretty dress and go set up in church and judge other people, but bitch, you're strung out too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's an escape. It's a way of looking for something outside of yourself, and that's exactly what drugs do too. Is they sort of help you escape yourself, but certainly religion does too. Sometimes with people, and I don't know. It's you put it the best way. It's a bondage. It's a form of being tied up.
Tied up and you don't know you're tied up. And so
Yeah.
this is why the Bible tells us not to judge other people and to beware of hypocrisy, because you can fall into those two traps and not even realize it. So I'm going to say this again: leave other people the fuck alone. Get
Yeah.
your mouth off of other people and let people live their lives, because you don't know what's going to happen when you stand before God for yourself.
Right. Exactly.
And so with that, I'm going to let you wrap us up with the last word. You can say whatever you want to say. And I feel like you've written a good book here that people of many different walks of life and lifestyles will be able to read through and find themselves written in it. For parents out there, for people in relationships out there, if you can't quite find the words to bring up certain topics that you've been meaning to talk about, this book can help you. You can get this book, bring you up that way. Hey, let's read this page right here. you know,
Yeah.
something like that. So
Yeah.
book is a conversation piece and it can help you in your personal lives.
Yeah, I would say, it's not just a matter of being true to yourself. It's also a need to express yourself and express your truth in some way. And I think there are a lot of different ways to do that that don't hurt other people. That like writing, like reading. You learn to express yourself and express your truth through things like that. And I think it's very important. And it's one of the reasons that exists, that's anthology, because I wanted to put a book out there that says it's okay for you to feel these things. It's okay for you to read these stories, and it's okay for you to take on the taboos and figure out what works for you in this world. And I think that that's something that comes across in the book, and I'm very excited that we managed to get stories that do say that kind of thing. We had over 200 submissions for that anthology, and we were very careful about what we selected to actually get down to that 20, and have variety there so it would reach different people, and certainly say something to them.
I'm happy about that because it helps people to step into somebody else's shoes.
Mhm.
Because so much of judgment, let's say like people who judge gay people, they want to kick us out of churches and stuff like that, but they've never been to a gay pride. They've never been
Yeah.
to information tables. They've never been to a PFLAG meeting. That stands for Parents of Friends, Lesbians and Gays, I think. But
Uh-huh.
it's a constructive, positive, nonprofit organization. We're not just, there's that aspect of us that's twirling around with barely any clothes on and all of that. That's true. But, straight people do their own shit too. But the point is, like they judge lifestyles that they have never come to come to the table. They've never hung
Mhm.
out with us. They've never been to a tattoo shop to see really what it's all about. They've never,
Yeah, yeah.
they've got these preconceived notions, but books like this help people to understand other lifestyles besides their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so maybe conservative, judgmental ass bitches will pick this up, and by the time they put it down, they won't be such a bitch anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope that's what happens.
Live a little, take some dick, shit, do something. But just judging people, fuck, it's not cute, Karen. It is not cute. Stop it, Karen. We're over you. All right. So your website is luanne-smith.com. Facebook is also Luanne Smith. I'm going to put this in the show notes.
Okay.
The name of the book is Taboos and Transgressions, Stories of Wrongdoing. That will go in the show notes along with the other 2 books as well. And
Okay.
it's been a joy having you today. I felt like the library was open today. I think Mama RuPaul would be proud of the work we have done. And I look forward to this show releasing. Thank you so much, Luanne.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devannon at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.